You might think you're simply observing the world around you, a neutral, passive spectator, just absorbing images, sounds, and sensations. But what if I told you that behind every observation, there's an invisible layer, a silent field of thoughts that, right now, are shaping the way your reality unfolds? Yes, something is happening in the background of your mind whenever you look at anything. These are automatic thoughts, almost imperceptible, that arise without you noticing, and they determine the energetic frequency you emit. They're not spoken out loud. No one can see them, many times not even you. But they're there, acting as vibrational filters that translate your perception into creation. That's why sometimes, even when you're looking at something positive, like prosperity, happiness, or love, what manifests is the exact opposite. Because it's not just about what you're seeing, it's about what you're silently thinking while you see it. And it's those hidden thoughts, often negative, conditioned, inherited, that send the real signal out to the universe. In this video, you'll discover the hidden power behind your observation. You'll learn how to identify what's operating in the backstage of your mind, and more importantly, how to shift that silent vibration to start creating a reality more aligned with what you truly desire. Because the truth is simple, yet profound. Your mind is never just seeing, it's always creating. What are silent thoughts and how do they work? Silent thoughts are like invisible whispers that rise up from the depths of the mind. No noise, no clear shape, yet carrying immense creative power. They don't show up as loud words or well-formed sentences. They're feeling thoughts, subtle vibrations that blend into your perception as you observe the world. And precisely because they're silent, they often escape your conscious attention, but not the language of the universe, which responds exactly to that hidden vibration. Imagine you're watching someone living a beautiful love story. On the outside, you smile, admire, maybe even think it's wonderful, but internally an automatic, barely noticeable thought arises. That's not for me. Or maybe, that always ends badly. That thought wasn't chosen rationally. It wasn't built through logic. It came from somewhere deeper, a place where past experiences, unprocessed emotions, learned fears, and unconscious beliefs are stored. These silent thoughts are like emotional programs running on autopilot. You don't consciously craft them. They're already there, ready to respond the moment you observe something. And the most surprising part is, they have nothing to do with what you want. They reflect what you carry. So even when you desire something with all your heart, you may be emitting the opposite frequency without even realizing it. They're quick, instinctive, disguised as fleeting sensations. Sometimes they show up as a slight tightness in your chest, a harmless seeming judgment, an instant conclusion that forms before you even have time to think clearly. It's as if, while your eyes are open to the world, your mind is quietly commenting on everything from within. For example, when you see a successful person, you might feel admiration, but along with it comes a hidden thought. I'll never have that. Or when you see someone happy in a relationship, your body warms up, but your mind whispers, that won't last. And all of it happens so quickly, you go on with your day believing you're vibrating positively, not realizing that your energy field has been affected by a contradicting frequency. This is where the true power of silent thoughts lies. They set the vibrational tone of your observation. It doesn't matter what you pretend to think or what you say out loud. The universe, the field, the creative intelligence, they tune into what's behind it, the true frequency, the emotional vibration that forms in the exact moment you observe something and react internally, even if you're unaware of it. And the more unconscious these thoughts are, the more power they hold over your reality, because there's no resistance, no filter, no conscious presence to choose differently. They just happen, and they shape, create, block, limit, repel. That's why understanding what these thoughts are is the first step to reclaiming the creative power of your mind. They're not your enemies. They were learned, often as defense mechanisms, built upon memories of pain, rejection, or fear. They appeared as ways to avoid suffering, But today they no longer serve your expansion. The key is to begin noticing them, to bring into light what operates in the dark, because what's unconscious controls you. But what becomes conscious sets you free. And when you start to listen, really listen, to what you're thinking as you observe, something shifts. You enter the frequency of conscious creation. Reality begins to open up in a new way, and that's when the silent miracle begins to unfold. The vibration behind your observation is what the universe responds to. The universe doesn't respond to the words you say. It also doesn't respond to the image you project, the smile you force, or the surface-level positivity you try to maintain. The universe, this living intelligence in constant communication with all that you are, responds to vibration. And that vibration isn't determined solely by what you consciously observe, but more so by what you feel, think, and believe in silence in the very moment of observation. You can look at something beautiful, deeply desire a better reality, mentally affirm that everything's fine, but if, deep down, there's a silent thought whispering, "This isn't for me," or "This is far from my reality," that's the vibration the universe will pick up on. That is what will be reflected back to you. Because it's not the appearance of your observation that holds power, it's the emotional energy accompanying it that defines what you're actually emitting to the field. Picture someone gazing at a beautiful house, feeling in their heart the desire to live in a place like that. Outwardly, they admire it, smile, dream. But internally, a subtle thought arises. I could never afford this. That's it. The real vibration isn't abundance, but lack. And that's the frequency being recorded by the universe. The eyes say, I want it, but the vibration says, I can't have it. And creation responds to that deeper energetic truth. It's as if the universe were an ultra-sensitive antenna, tuned to your most authentic frequency, the one you're not always aware of. It doesn't respond to surface intentions, but to the coherence between what you see, feel, and believe. And silent thoughts are the invisible link between your external observation and the internal vibration you emit. This explains why so many people feel frustrated when practicing positive affirmations or visualizations. They look at what they want, repeat empowering phrases, but continue vibrating doubt, fear, or inadequacy. Because in the moment of observation, the silent thought is still active, emitting a frequency that contradicts the words being spoken. And the universe, neutral and precise, simply responds to what's most true within you. The vibrational frequency accompanying your observation acts like an energetic command. It's as if every time you look at something and think something, even in silence, you're sending a vibrational password into the field. And that password unlocks specific doors of expansion or limitation, fulfillment or frustration. What matters is not what your eyes are seeing, but what your being is saying through vibration. And here's the crucial point. This vibration can be elevated, intentional, aligned. But to do that, you need presence. You must step out of autopilot mode, where silent thoughts run the show, and step into a state of conscious observation. Because when you look at something and simultaneously feel, this is possible, this is coming to me, this already exists in my reality, you completely shift the signal you're sending out. And that shift changes the flow of manifestation. The universe doesn't need effort. It needs vibrational clarity. It needs your observation and your feeling to be in harmony. When that happens, the response is almost immediate. You start to notice small signs, unlikely encounters, doors opening. Because the right vibration is like a code that activates realities that were previously invisible. How these thoughts were formed and why you don't notice them. Silent thoughts don't come from nowhere. They're the result of years, sometimes lifetimes, of emotional and mental programming. They form in the deepest layers of the psyche, where experiences, memories, and emotional impressions accumulate and transform into unconscious beliefs. You don't just wake up one day thinking, this isn't for me, out of the blue. That thought, as automatic and subtle as it may seem, carries a story, and that story needs to be understood. From a very young age, even in childhood, We begin to form an identity based on what we experience, hear, and feel. A child who grows up being compared, ignored, criticized, or doubted, even in seemingly small moments, will begin to internalize silent messages about their worth, about what they can or cannot achieve, about what is or isn't possible for them. And these messages don't settle only in the rational mind. They sink deeply into the emotional body, where they become automatic response patterns to reality. You see someone succeeding and think, "That will never happen for me." That thought isn't new. It was planted a long time ago, maybe when you tried something and were discouraged, or when someone told you, through words or actions, that you weren't capable. Over time, those impressions solidify, and when they go unseen or unhealed, they become the silent foundation on which your entire perception of the world is built. And the most challenging part is that these thoughts don't feel like thoughts. They don't show up as a clear phrase in your mind. They appear as sensations, subtle discomforts, internal reactions that often go unnoticed. That's why you don't catch them, because they don't speak out loud. They vibrate. They manifest as that sudden feeling of unworthiness, as the lump in your throat when an opportunity arises, as fear disguised as realism. On top of that, the brain, in order to conserve energy, runs on autopilot. It relies on pre-existing patterns to interpret what you see, feel, and experience. That means unless you bring conscious awareness to the moment, your mind will fall back on the same silent thoughts it always has, the ones programmed long ago by pain, trauma, or repetition. Not because you choose to think that way, but because that's how you were conditioned to respond to life. Often, these thoughts aren't even yours. They were inherited, passed down from parents, caregivers, teachers, authority figures, handed from generation to generation as truths disguised as advice, like, don't trust too much, money is hard, don't expect too much from people. The repetition of these ideas over time turns them into automatic reactions. You no longer need to think them consciously. They simply arise in the background of your mind as you observe the world. The original role of these thoughts was to protect. The mind created those filters to avoid pain, rejection, or failure. They worked as defense mechanisms in moments when you didn't have the tools to deal with certain kinds of suffering. But now those same thoughts are holding you back. They block your expansion. They limit your ability to see possibilities and access new realities. And worse, because they act silently, you keep living in the same cycle, unable to understand why nothing changes despite all your effort. It's like trying to build a new life on top of an old cracked foundation. You plant positive thoughts, make affirmations, visualize the best, but in the invisible foundation of your mind, silent thoughts are still active, saying the opposite. And since the universe responds to your true vibration, it's that foundation that keeps shaping your reality. How to hear what you think while you observe. Hearing what you think while you observe is one of the most subtle and transformative practices in the awakening of consciousness. It's not just a simple exercise in reflection or an attempt to force positive thoughts. It goes much deeper than that. It's about developing the ability to catch the micro movements of the mind at the exact moment you engage with the external world. It's like placing a microphone in your inner silence and, for the first time, clearly hearing what's actually being said, even if no words are spoken. The mind is always talking to itself, interpreting, reacting, concluding. And it does this even when you believe you're in silence. For example, when you observe someone achieving something you also desire, success, freedom, love, your mind reacts instantly. It could be a slight discomfort, a subtle judgment, a sense of comparison or inadequacy. All of that is the mind's silent language. The vibration behind the observation forms in that very instant. But how can you catch something that happens so quickly and so subtly? The answer is presence. Most people look at the world with their eyes, but without presence. They look, judge, move on. They don't ask themselves what they felt. They don't investigate what they thought. They're so used to the mind's automatic operation that they don't even realize there's a constant internal dialogue shaping their vibration. To begin hearing these thoughts, you must slow down the act of observing. Create space between stimulus and response. Be fully present in the moment of observation. One powerful practice is subtle self-listening. When you observe something, especially something that triggers desire, envy, admiration, or any intense emotion, pause for a moment. Don't turn away, don't react. Just breathe and ask yourself, what did I really think when I saw this? The answer may come as a vague feeling, a brief memory, an internal echo. That's okay. Don't force it. Just be present and allow that thought to surface. Often it comes in phrases like, I could never have that, that's not for me, I'm not capable, or something subtler like, that feels far away. And when you start to recognize these thoughts, something begins to shift. The light of awareness deactivates the automatic force of programming. Another way to access this hidden content is through a technique called pause and decode. In front of any scene that stirs a reaction, pause for 5 seconds. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what sensation am I feeling right now? What silent thought is accompanying this feeling? Don't try to change anything right away. Just observe. Become the witness. Because only when you truly hear what you think can you begin to choose to think differently. You don't shift an unconscious pattern through blind effort, but through clarity. This is a training process. At first, the thoughts might seem invisible, but with practice, you begin to pick up on the emotional tones that accompany them. You'll notice that often your body reacts before you even identify the thought. Your heart races, your breath shifts, your shoulders tense. These are signals, entry points into the vibrational content you're emitting in that moment. The body is an ally on this path. You can also ask yourself while observing something, is this thought really mine, or was it learned? That simple question holds the power to break through decades of conditioning, because many of the thoughts you carry while observing the world aren't truly yours. They were absorbed, they were inherited, repeated until they became your inner voice, but they're not your essence. And once you realize that, you reclaim the power to create a new internal dialogue. Reprogramming the thoughts that accompany your observation. Reprogramming the thoughts that accompany your observation is, in truth, re-educating the way you relate to reality. It's not enough to want to see the world more positively. You must dive into the vibrational root of what you feel when you observe, and consciously plant a new frequency there. What you think in silence as you observe something is like a seed being cast into the invisible field of creation. If that seed is tainted with fear, lack, or rejection, it will continue to bear the same limited fruit. But if reprogrammed with presence, intention, and truth, it becomes a starting point for a new reality. This process begins with a deep realization. What you think is not a neutral reflection of reality. It's a choice that can be reshaped. Observation is not a passive mirror, but an active doorway to creation. And the silent thought that arises in that moment can be intercepted, reinterpreted, and over time, replaced by a higher vibration. But this takes awareness, practice, and above all, the willingness to become the conscious creator of your internal experience. When you observe something that used to trigger feelings of inferiority, distance, or frustration, like someone living a lifestyle you desire, or a situation that seems out of reach, your first impulse may be the old silent thought of scarcity, but it's precisely in that moment that reprogramming begins. When you notice the vibration that's arising, you can consciously introduce a new thought. Not an empty, rehearsed phrase, but a living affirmation, felt and grounded in the present. Instead of, "This will never be mine," you can say inwardly, "This is coming closer to me." Instead of, "I'm not capable," you can affirm, "I am becoming this version now." And more than repeating phrases, the real key is in sustaining the vibration those words carry. You must feel the truth behind them, even if at first it feels unnatural. Because the mind, when repeatedly exposed to new vibrational ideas, begins to accept, integrate, and transform its patterns. Visualization is also an essential tool in this process, but not a distant, idealized visualization. Instead, a practice of vibrational presence. When you observe something you desire, instead of energetically pulling away with silent thoughts of denial, you can close your eyes for a moment and imagine that it already belongs to your reality. Feel what it would be like to see it from a place of belonging, not of lack. The vibration shifts, the body responds, and the universe begins to register a new frequency. Reprogramming also happens in the presence of intention. Every time you observe something and notice yourself slipping into the old pattern, pause, breathe, and bring intention into that moment. Consciously choose how you want to feel, what you want to affirm, what vibration you want to send out. It might seem small, almost imperceptible, but it's in those silent moments that the greatest vibrational shifts happen, because it's in the invisible that reality begins to take form. Over time, this practice stops feeling like effort and becomes natural. You begin to notice that your mind feels lighter, more open. The old silent thoughts may still show up, but you don't feed them, and little by little, they lose their power. The new vibration stabilizes, and when that happens, reality starts responding with new signs. What once felt far away starts moving closer. What once caused discomfort now inspires. Your gaze changes because the vibration behind it has changed. Reprogramming the silent thoughts that accompany observation is not an act of denying reality. It's a deep alignment with your creative power. You're not pretending something is different. You're choosing to emit a new vibration toward what you observe. You're consciously choosing what to plant in the invisible field of creation. And when that choice is made with presence, emotion, and truth, the universe responds, because deep down, it's just been waiting for you to say, through your vibration, I'm ready to live what I once only watched from afar. When you change the silent thought, reality speaks differently. There is a quiet, almost imperceptible moment when something inside you shifts, and the world begins to respond differently. There are no fireworks, no outward announcement, but there's an inner shift as subtle as it is powerful. It's the moment you begin to change the silent thought that accompanies your observation. Not the forced, rehearsed thought that tries to sound positive, but the one that vibrates in coherence with a new inner frequency. The change happens within first, and then, inevitably, it reflects outward. When that shift begins, you no longer need to force reality. Life starts to reorganize itself naturally. It responds to the new vibrational field you're holding. You begin to notice small signs like echoes of a new truth forming within you. Situations that once triggered automatic reactions now pass through you with ease. People who once seemed unreachable start drawing near. What once caused pain now invites reflection, because you are no longer the same observer. And when the observer changes, what is observed changes too. This is the moment when everything starts to make sense. You realize it was never just reality that was limiting you. It was the silent filter through which you were interpreting it. And now, with that filter being cleansed, adjusted, and realigned with your essence, life begins to reflect new possibilities. The gaze that once carried scarcity now recognizes abundance. The mind that once reacted with doubt now responds with curiosity and openness. The heart that once withdrew in fear now expands in the face of the same. It's not that the old thoughts suddenly disappear. They may still arise, but you no longer take them as truth. You see them, but you don't claim them as your identity. You hear them, but don't identify with them. And that small space between thought and belief, that's where freedom begins. Because in that space, you can choose. You can breathe, affirm a new idea, hold a new vibration, and every time you do, reality listens. Yes, reality listens to what you don't even realize you're saying. It is always tuned to your deepest vibration, the one that forms in the space between what you observe and what you believe. And when you change that vibrational core, you begin to see responses that once seemed impossible. Meaningful coincidences appear. Blocked paths open up. People show up like perfect puzzle pieces only you could fit. Because finally you are in honest dialogue with life. It's as if the universe had always been waiting for you to shift your frequency so it could deliver what was already reserved for you. And suddenly you understand. It was never about worthiness or about exhausting effort. It was about alignment. You only needed to adjust your vibration so that what once felt distant could finally find you. This new vibration can't be sustained by desire alone. It needs practice, presence, loving repetition. But it is possible, and once it becomes constant, reality transforms. Not as random magic, but as the direct consequence of a real inner shift. What once seemed like resistance from the world now reveals itself as the reflection of unconscious thoughts. And by rewriting the silent thought, you rewrite the response life gives you. Life becomes more fluid. Relationships gain depth. Opportunities begin to appear without forced effort. Because you're no longer trying to create reality with a divided mind. You're aligned. And coherence creates. Coherence opens doors. Coherence transforms. We've come to the end of our journey, and maybe now you realize something profound. Your life doesn't respond just to what you consciously observe, but to what you secretly think while you observe. It's those silent thoughts, automatic, invisible, conditioned, that shape the vibration you emit. And the universe, always precise, responds exactly to that vibration, not to your surface intentions. So here's a simple and transformative challenge. For the next 24 hours, every time you observe something, pause for 5 seconds and listen to the thought that arises. If it isn't constructive, replace it right there, with intention, with presence, with truth. You'll see how that changes everything. Because in the silence of the mind, you are creating the next chapter of your reality. And the more conscious that silence becomes, the more beautiful the story it writes.